Just mute them.
Okay, well, I think we have about everybody on, so it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to our 2026 virtual barrel tasting party. We're really excited to have you on board. We got a great program today, and I want to make sure that you've poured all your wines and no cheating. Now, we're not going to start drinking the wines just yet, but I want to make sure that you've poured the wines, and then we're going to taste them together. So if everyone has their glasses ready, I have my glass ready here. Does everyone have this? This is the proper wine for glass for virtual tasting. So hopefully everybody has one of these. So good. Anyway, I'd like to make some introductions first. How about we introduce Brooks Painter, winemaker emeritus. So thank you for Brooks for joining us. Like our winemakers, Peter Velleno. Peter, welcome. Jason Moravec, welcome to the tasting. And then Audrie, thank you for joining us. Audrie Walsh, our
Hey.
winemaker. And so I have a couple special announcements. Maybe some of you have heard, but this is Brooks's farewell tour with V. Sattui Winery. He's retiring at the end of the year, and he's become winemaker emeritus. We have some great promotions. Peter and Jason have been promoted to director of winemaking positions, and Audrey's been promoted to winemaker. We have a great succession between Peter, Audrey, and Jason. We have about 30 years of winemaking experience here at V. Sattui. You know, Brooks, of course, has been with us for 22 vintages. Peter's going on 18, Jason 11, and this is 3 years for Audrey. So what a great team. And I think you all will be very excited to taste these wines. And let me just tell you about the 25 vintage. Not only is it a great vintage, and you will hear today from some of our wine growers and others extolling this great vintage that we have, but this is also a very special year for V. Sattui. This is our 50th anniversary vintage. We're going to be having special commemorative labels on all these wines. And so if you purchase these wines as futures, you will be getting some pretty cool stuff as far as labeling. And something too that we're going to add on. When we do the final blends of these wines, you're going to receive that handwritten blending notes of these vintages. And so that's something that we're going to be doing for these 25 reds. And so you'll get to see this scribble from our winemakers as they craft these amazing wines. And so we want to dedicate this vintage to Brooks, you know, for him to go out on top with this 25 vintage. And he's just been a game changer for V. Sattui in his 22 years. He's, I think, touched every vintage since 2005. And I could go on, but I'd like to just run a quick video. I ran into one of our grape growers for Preston Vineyard the other night at a event at Martini Winery, and he just went on and on about what Brooks has meant to him. So, Allie, if you would please run that video.
Hello, Mike Nunez here. I have known Brooks for about 20 years now, and from the first time that I met him, it's always been about quality, not quantity. As we know, every single grape growing year is different. We might have a drought, we might have major rainfalls. Brooks has been phenomenal at doing the best protocol for that specific year to give us the best possible grapes. Throughout the years, I have learned so much from Brooks. I consider him a mentor. I have implemented all of his grape growing protocols into my farming operations. Brooks, I just wanted to thank you for all the years that I have known you, all the knowledge you have shared. Your professionalism has really helped me shape my career. Here's to Brooks.
All right, you're gonna make me cry now, Tom.
Well, Brooks, when it's one thing to have us say great things about you, but I think all of us that are professionals, and when you have someone that is in your profession, a peer, talk about the amazing work that you've done, I think that's pretty special. Anyway, kudos to you, Brooks, and for the wines that you've crafted. Anyway, I could go on and on, but let's get into with this tasting. Just a couple things. So you're going to be hearing from a lot of different people tonight. Our winemakers are going to be explaining these wines and going through and tasting them. And we've set this up just like we would if we're here at the winery and we're doing a blending session. Was it yesterday or day before? We sat in the tower in the Victoria room and tasted through 2 or 3 hours worth of wines. And of course, that's the fun part of our job. And so I think you will really enjoy today's tasting, and hopefully you take advantage of the special discounts and offerings that we're going to be having on this very special vintage of our 50th vintage. And so I know everyone's excited to get tasting, but before we do, I'd like to maybe just have a little round robin here, just talking to these experts really about the 25 vintage. And Brooks, would you mind kicking that off with our folks here?
Well, of course, I always like to share my observations about particular vintages and how they may impact the wines. To what Mike just said, each year is different. We go through droughts, we have heavy rainfall, we have frost, we have heat spikes. In general, 2025, we had certainly ample rainfall. We had a few more frost events in the spring, which is always a little dicey. We're wondering what's going to happen in the vineyard. Fortunately, we had good protection. So the crop was solid going into bloom. It was a reasonably good set. In general, the take-home message is it was a cool vintage, cool season. We had very few days over 100 degrees. Just a handful. Until late harvest. So as we went into August, September, harvest was delayed a little bit. There was a lot of talk about the advanced flavor development beyond sugar accumulation or Brix development. And so we were waiting. Okay, when is the Brix going to come up? Well, the flavors seem to be there. Should we go ahead and pick? And so there was a lot of conversations about that. And if I was to remember a particular vintage that reminds me of, probably 2018 is one that's recent. It was cool like this, extended season, extended hang time, and that those extra weeks on the vine just seemed to really develop the intensity. Of course, a cool season always gives us more phenolic concentration, better color, softer tannins, and so 2025 is just one of those vintages. It's going to be very approachable, but also long aged. So that's my take on the 25.
Hey, Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, 2025 is these wines are showing really nicely right now. We are going to get a chance with all of our guests here to try the wines the way that we try them as part of the winemaking team. We taste these wines so many more times before they're bottled than they are after they're bottled. So this is really bringing all of our guests into our world here. We're going to be looking for the fruit profile and the texture of these wines. They're young wines still in barrels. The fruit is going to be, the basic character is going to stay the same throughout the life of the wine, but what's going to change is the vibrancy and the intensity of the aromatics as some of the fermentation aromas go away, and then the oak aromas and the attributes that you get on the mouthfeel from the oak, that's what's going to develop and continue over the next year as these wines are aging in barrels. So things like vanilla, the smoky oak flavor you get, that's still going to develop over the next year. For a blend tasting like this, we do tend to use spittoons and spit out wines. We have a lot of important decisions to make when we're blending wines together. However, I'll say on a Friday afternoon like this, I think you'll see our spittoons aren't quite as full at the end of the day as they might be on a Wednesday morning. But it's going to be great to taste these wines, see what they're like, and just check in.
Peter, we have a question. How do you know when the wine is ready to bottle? How many months in barrel? For example, these wines we're tasting today have a whole nother year in barrel. And so can you describe what we're tasting over the next 12 months before we bottle?
Absolutely, yeah. So it comes down to the style of wine that you want to make. Something like Pinot Noir is only going to be in barrels for 8 months. Wines like Zinfandel, 16 to 18, and then our Cabernets are 20 to 22. So it's about complementing the fruit and the style of the wine with the oak, such that the oak is lifting the fruit up, but it's not dominating. So we know from experience that certain varieties, certain vineyards, what kind of barrel age they need. And so for Zinfandels, that's usually on the lower end. Right now, we bottled our Zinfandels from the 2024 vintage just last week, and we're getting ready to bottle Cabernets over the next month.
Great. Audrey and Jason, just to round out your impressions.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things that we really look for at the beginning of the vintage is how much color we have, because that's a really good indicator of how well these are going to age, even when they're still at the winery and then beyond. We're seeing a lot of color in the 2025 vintage. That means that there's a lot of, like molecular structure there to integrate with that oak, and it's going to help develop the wines over time. It means that that fruit flavor, that color is going to stay in the wine and that it's really concentrated. So that's when we're seeing in the fermenters, seeing, okay, really big color. So far, this vintage is looking really good. So we've been seeing a lot of that with 25. So that's a good, exciting indicator for us.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Brooks. I truly think that this is a lot like 2018. And 2018 was one of my personal favorite vintages. I mean, those wines are just showcasing so well right now. So we're fortunate to be able to have those and be able to be tasting them after they've aged for a while. So being able to capture these wines as futures and hold on to them, I know that they're going to showcase really well.
Great. Well, hey, Jason, what do you think? Are we ready to get this show on the road?
All right, let's do this. So I hope everyone has poured their wines. If you haven't, please do so now. I'm going to kind of jump right into our first wine here. But first, one of my favorite things about these virtual wine tastings is that we're not stuck at a winery trying to explain where these vineyards are. We can actually take you to these vineyards. So I actually had the opportunity to sit down and interview the owner of the first wine here. This is going to be the Black Sears Vineyard Zinfandel. And I got to sit down with Ashley Sears Jambois. And so we have a little interview here for you. If Ali can cue that up.
The ranch is about 400 acres, and most of that is actually forested land. From the farming aspect, it's about 24 acres. A little less than half of that is planted to Zinfandel, which is the 50-year-old dry farm Zin.
Amazing stuff.
And then we also grow Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and a bit of Merlot as well. And they do really, really well here.
When you were a kid, did you even think that you would be continuing the reins of the family here?
So I did. I grew up here. We moved from Berkeley when I was about 3 years old. And I spent my childhood in the vineyard behind us, really just playing, living here. It wasn't so much about the business of farming. It was really more about the living of farming and of rural life.
Sitting up here, it's just majestic. And you can really get a sense of place whenever you're here. What makes kind of Howell Mountain so special, but also the Black Sears Vineyard here?
So one of the things is the climate. We are typically above the fog. So we're about 2,400 feet above sea level. It's really unique. We typically are about 2 to 3 weeks later than the valley in terms of bud break and harvest and all of that. But during the summertime, we're about 10 degrees cooler than the valley floor during the height of the afternoon, and we're about 10 degrees warmer than the valley floor at night. So I think that evening out of temperature, it's really just kind of steady throughout the growing season. So that allows for more even ripening, a little chance to have it just be more gentle for the ripening of the fruit.
Looking at the Zinfandel programs, I mean, I always love the Black Sears Zinfandel because we're able to really give it the hang time that we're looking for in Zinfandel. It creates so much more of that flavor. It's always one of the later Zinfandels that we bring into the winery, and I think it really shows in the wines.
Yeah, this past 2025 harvest was their 50th season. So they are dry farmed, which means there's no irrigation. We don't water them, and they're really in touch with the weather. I really think there's a lot of wisdom in those vines.
In the last decade, we've been hit with a lot of different challenges in the vineyard, especially, being up here on the mountains, whether it be pests, diseases, or even like wildfires. There must be a lot of struggles there. And I was wondering, how do you deal with these struggles? And it must be very stressful. What do you do to help get you through that?
We have certainly had struggles. And then, the 2020 glass fire, which hit all of Napa Valley quite hard, was really difficult for us. We lost a lot of our Cabernet vineyard to that fire that we had to replant, and, acres and acres of forest that burned. Not to mention, our home, we live here and we were out of power for 15 months. So it really was just a reevaluating of what does it mean to be here. And Chris and I at one point looked at each other and said, we can't do this anymore. We're sure we can't. We're out of here. We're selling. And we realized there's nothing else that we would rather do. There's nowhere else we would rather be. We are absolutely living the life that we built and that we desired for ourselves and our family.
That is a breath of fresh air for us. We are so glad that you decided to stay with the vineyard, because I don't know what we would do without the Black Sears. And so I'm glad that you were able to get through those struggles. I'd like to talk a little bit about the 2025 vintage in particular. How is it a little bit different maybe than the other vintages?
I think it was one of the most exciting growing seasons we've seen in a long, long time. From the beginning, it was just, we had plenty of moisture, the temperatures were perfect, we had no heat spikes. This was just picture perfect growing season, and we didn't have to hurry scurry to pick fruit. So I think it's really one of the most exciting vintages we've seen in a long, long time.
And it's really neat to be able to allow the vineyard to really speak for itself. Having that nice even growing season, it gave us amazing color, and the fruit profile is complex and interesting. You guys should be very proud of what you've created, and we are very happy to be able to be a part of that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a very special place that we live in, for sure.
It's a very, very special place.
Well, that was Ashley. That was really nice of her to sit down with me. But let's dive right into this wine, what we've all been waiting for. So don't be scared. Stick your nose in that glass. Give it a good smell. Give it a taste. And this is the Black Sears Zinfandel 2025. Audrie, can you tell me some of the components that stand out to you in this wine?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say that once you put a red wine down a barrel, it has a lot of baby fat to it. And I feel like we're really at that stage right now where that kind of really fruity fermentation smell starts to go away. And you start to see what this wine looks like and what it's going to look like as it ages more. This is a really beautiful wine. I mean, you even said previously that the color is amazing, and it is. I'm getting a lot of black plum, blackberry in the aroma that's coming through in the palette. I'm getting blackberry. Um, I mean, really beautiful. And the most interesting thing I think about black sears is the black pepper. And I'm getting that as well, which we see that the fermentation stage, sometimes it can kind of dip in and out as it's going through that early barrel phase. And I feel like it's really just starting to poke out now. Mountain fruit tends to have a little bit more structured rustic tannin. So I'm getting a little bit of that right now, which is going to uh, smooth out over time as it's had more barrel age and it's had more time to interact with those oak tannin. But to me, when I see something that's a little rustic at this stage, it just means it's going to age well. So yeah, overall, really beautiful representation of mountains in.
Yeah, I agree. I get a lot of those aromas in this as well. Brooks, I mean, Audrie just spoke a little bit about the black pepper in this Zinfandel. Can you tell me kind of why this vineyard has it, and where does it come from? And then also, what would you pair this wine with?
Well, it's still a bit of a mystery after working with this vineyard for 22 years, because it varies from year to year. I think it has to do with many different components. First and foremost, the northeast exposure. So it's a very cool site. It takes a lot longer to ripen. And then the clone, it's a heritage clone called the Haines selection from St. Helena, which are large clusters. They tend to have wings and a lot of berries in the interior of the cluster. And those, I think, is where a lot of this peppery note comes from. And so it's always been a hallmark of this wine. There's no question. It varies from year to year. I certainly pick it up in this year. It's not a dominant theme. I think what Audrie touched on there with the blackberry, and black cherry is really dominant. And so what I would choose to match this with one of my favorites is Middle Eastern foods. Whether it's lamb or chicken or beef, something that has a lot of spice, a lot of spicy character, because that's what I find in general with Zinfandels, but in particular with the black sears. And so, couscous and lamb, marinated lamb with vegetables, something like that, with a good shot of 8 or 10 of your favorite spices, is a really good choice. Of course, others, if you're not looking for something so spicy, I love duck breast or wildfowl with this. So there's a couple suggestions.
Oh, you have my mouth watering already. When can I come over? I'll bring the black sears.
Well, tomorrow, Saturday, I think it's, we'll see.
All right, I'll see you then.
Okay.
Hey, Pete, can you tell us a little bit how this wine is handled in the cellar? And what are some of the basic fermentation and aging protocols for this wine?
Sure. We make a lot of different Zinfandels for Sattui, and it's one of my favorite parts of our wine portfolio. Truth is, we take a very similar approach with each of the Zinfandels. That's very much intentional. So we're really trying to highlight what's unique about the vineyard, so that it's kind of a hands-off approach from the winemaking side. So we want the fruit to show through, the natural spiciness of the that we get from the vineyard. And one way that we really respect the fruit is that we're very careful with the barrel aging. I mentioned earlier, we tend to barrel age Zinfandel for about 18 months, but also the new oak percentage is pretty low. It's 35%. So that's a lot lower than a lot of our Cabernets, which might be 50 and well above 50. So by keeping the new oak percentage down, we're not covering up that fruit. We're letting those nuances from the vineyard really shine through, because our objective here is to make each of those Zinfandels very distinct.
Yeah, well, an amazing job. As I look through our allocations, of course, those that have been buying this wine, for the last 40 some years know that we have a limited production of it. We have a grand total of 4 dozen cases, that are left and on availability to purchase this wine as a future. So it might be, if you like it, put a check mark by it because it won't be around for long. It's my pleasure to introduce the next wine. And this is our 2025 Pilgrim Zin, a real old vine Zin from out in Lodi. And I think the best way for me to tell you next is just to be forthright. I've loved Zinfandels. I think everyone that knows me knows that I have been the champion of Zinfandel here at Sattui. We started with just a couple. I think we got up to over a dozen. And Dario says, Tom, cut back the number of Zins. We have way too many Zinfandels. And he's right. Poor winemaking team. We have so many different small lots of winemaking. And so as we kind of pare down, because here's what's happened. We've gone out and, we were so tired of losing our great Zinfandel vineyards. And if we go back to the Doherty Ancient Vine, if we go back to the Old Crow Ridge and others that have just been torn out for housing, we went out and bought our own vineyard, Old Vine Vineyard, Schoolhouse and Dry Creek, amazing Zinfandel. For those who've had a chance to try it, we now have a very small lot of Morazoli's so right next to the Cabernet Vineyard. And so unfortunately, this is the last sip of the Pilgrim Zinfandel 2025, and what a great year for us to go out on this particular wine. It's just delicious. And Audrie, I know you've been a fan of this wine for a long time. What can you share your thoughts about this old vine Pilgrim Zin?
Yeah, I mean, it's the wine it's hard not to like because it is such a delicious style of a Zinfandel, as you said. It pulls in a lot of big fruit flavor. You get some chocolate. I tend to think of it like dark raspberry or like chocolate covered cherry. It's a really good wine to pair with just about any food because of that when you have such a big fruit bomb, where it's a fruit bomb but kind of refined. And I think that's where those chocolate notes come in. Sometimes you get kind of dark cocoa. And the way I look about it when I'm pairing foods with it is where would you throw dark cocoa into a dish? And, I like to throw that in to like complex my food. So sometimes you do like a chili and you'll throw dark chocolate into it, even though you don't taste it in there. It throws a darker, kind of more expansive note into your food. And you can do something similar when you're pairing a Zinfandel, especially this one. So if you're looking to have food with it, and you want to kind of broaden that food, you can throw in a Zinfandel that has those chocolate and those juicy, dark, kind of black cherry notes. So it's really neat that way. And also it's an old vine Zin. I mean, some of our oldest vine Zin comes from Lodi. I think that's where the most concentrated old vine Zin in the world is. So to have something that was made as a robust style and then pared down to be a more luxury, luxury farmed wine where you're not overcropping the vines and you're just letting them concentrate in the fruit, you end up getting something like this that is more refined. So it's really neat to be able to see how that changes in a glass. Even though they're farmed very similarly as other old vines, and you're getting a very different, full, plush fruit profile with Lodi. So I'm going to pass this on to Brooks because I'm really wondering how this 2025 vintage compares to other vintages because, I mean, like we're talking old vines is it going to taste the same every year? They're very old vines. So I want to hear what Brooks's thoughts are on that.
Well, speaking as someone who's old, I will tell you that no, it just gets better. The Pilgrim Zinfandel, our first year harvesting these grapes in 2003, and I joined the company in 2005. So one of my first tasks was looking at the 23 vintage wines, including the Zinfandels. And the first time I tried the Pilgrim, it just really knocked my socks off because I did not have a lot of experience with Lodi area fruit, and it's always just been, ever since, it's been just such a succulent, round, soft velvety Zinfandel is just something you want to spread with a butter knife on your toast. It's so rich. And the history of the vineyard itself, of course, goes back many, many years, decades and decades. Our friends, the Hirsches, who are the original owners that we purchased these grapes from, and we had a wonderful relationship with them. And then subsequently, many years later, there's a new owner. The name Pilgrim came from John Bunyan's book, Pilgrim's Progress, because they had moved all over the world. They were both educators, and they decided, okay, we're putting down roots here in Lodi, and we're done moving. Well, lo and behold, another 15 years later, actually 20 years later, they sold to a lovely couple who are now the current owners, the Fernandez. And but the soils are 30 feet deep out there, and if you look at the influence of climate, you have the Mokelumne River, the Stanislaus River, the Sacramento River. They're all kind of coming together right there. So these are waters that are coming from snowmelt, joining out in the middle of the Central Valley. It has a significant influence. And then on top of that, you have the bay influence. So you have the San Francisco Bay winds whipping up through the Carquinez Straits. And so when people think, oh, Lodi, it must be pretty hot. Well, it's surprisingly much of a cooler climate up there. And the old vines just add to that complexity. It restricts the number of clusters, the production. It concentrates it. But this is a wine that you can blend with almost anything and improve the quality. It's just it's such a lovely wine.
Well, I agree. This has always been one of my favorites, and when you mentioned about the blackberry jam, that's what as Kara knows, that's what I have a piece of Acme toast in the morning with some good sweet butter that we get from the Mercado. Oh my God! Next time you come to the Mercado, make sure you taste some of their great butters that James brings in, and you put some blackberry. It tastes just like that blackberry jam. Well, hey, let's keep this great tasting going because we got another amazing Zinfandel coming up and another historic wine. This is our Qualia Vineyard Zinfandel. And let me just say, this is a miracle that we have the 25 vintage in this glass. The property has been sold. The Qualias sold, there was a bunch of family members. They ended up selling the land. The city designated this 3.5 acres for high density housing right in the midst of St. Helena. It should be illegal. And so the new owners are trying to get the housing put in. And thankfully, the neighbors are up in arms. In fact, I spoke to one of the neighbors at an event here last week, and she says, Tom, you might be getting this for a while longer because we are going to keep suing and to stop the planting of this vineyard, planting of houses and to take this old vine. So it's still no assurance that we can get this another year. We do have it for the 26 vintage, so that is really good news. But this 25, it's just crazy that we can continue making this amazing old vine Zin from right here in St. Helena. And I know, Brooks, this has just been one of your favorites from the get-go since you joined the winery 20 plus years ago. Why is this such a special wine to our portfolio?
Well, it just it's always served my looking for something in a Zinfandel that's a little bit more special. And in this case, I think I attribute a lot of it to the field blend aspect of this. The Qualia family purchased this vineyard in the 30s, just after Prohibition, during economic catastrophe, and they continue to farm it to this day. The vines, it's unclear exactly. The vines were probably planted somewhere between 40 and 50 years prior to that. So certainly this is an ancient vine, Zinfandel, but it incorporates Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, some Carignan and Alicante Boucher. Some of you may be familiar with those other varieties. And the reason they were using those back in the day is because you could pick them all together. It was called a field blend. You just went out and made a decision to pick everything. And each and every of those varieties are going to contribute something different to the quality and character of the wine. And that's, as winemakers, that's what we're always looking for. Okay, where do we have an edge? What can we add that's going to make this really phenomenal? And so I'd like to ask Jason, some of those other varieties, what do you think that brings to the blends here?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, the Petit Syrah is going to give a little of that inky color, a little more of that concentration. It really is it's a great variety to blend into the Zinfandel, and to be able to have it in the field even before you even bring it in. We're bringing that in and we co-ferment them together at the same time. It really marries those varieties together from the very beginning, and it leads to Zinfandels that are darker in color and have a whole nother layer of fruits.
Yeah, I would say the Zinfandel adds some very nice blackberry spice, some acidity. Petit Syrah, of course, boldness, concentrated astringency, and inky dark pigments. The Carignan is more juicy, red fruit, spicy. And when you throw all these together in one glass, you're getting the benefit of each of the ancient dynasties of these grapes, because they came from different areas. They were selected by different people, and so it makes our job really fun to see each of these varieties all exhibited in the glass.
Yeah, and if you take a look at these, at some of our Zins here, they're some of them say old vines, and some of them say ancient vine, like this Qualia. Now, the way that we define these is that old vine needs to be at least 50 years old, but these ancient vines are at least 75 plus years old. And this is where we find the magic is really happening with these Zinfandels. They're older, they're producing less tons per acre, so the yields drop significantly. And what's happening here is because you have less fruit per vine, the vine can give so much more concentration and flavor to the fruit that's left. And so that's what we're finding happens with a vineyard like this Qualia, that's an ancient vine. And then also the vine becomes more balanced. This is once they become this age, they've kind of set themselves up for, this is how much fruit I can produce. We don't have to go through and thin any fruit out. The vines are just happy right where they are. They know how to live and produce the correct amount of fruit, and it's a very balanced wine. So we're so happy to be able to have this for one more year, and then we'll see if it can happen again. So a miracle just might happen.
If I could ask Peter, you've been observing all of our Zinfandels and the macerations, the fermentations. What do we do differently with Zinfandel as opposed to, for example, a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Bordeaux variety in terms of cap management and pressing procedures? And why do we do that?
Sure, yeah, and it starts with the way that the grapes come in and how we handle them on the crush pad. Zinfandel is a little bit different in that we allow a little bit of dehydration and maybe some underripe berries to be part of the mix. That's all the different varieties you mentioned that were out in the field blend. You know, we like to think they ripen all exactly at the same time, but there's always a little bit of differences. And that's part of the magic of Zinfandel. You get these riper components and you get these spicier, more herbal components all at the same time. So that's kind of, for me, that's what makes Zinfandel really special. So as we're fermenting, we want to accentuate that. Sometimes we're dealing with very high sugar levels, so we might take some certain actions to make sure that the fermentations are healthier. We tend to use open top fermenter tanks That allows some evaporation of alcohol so that we don't build up too much. If you use a closed top tank, you kind of contain the alcohol. So that's one thing we do. We tend to ferment a pretty long time on skins. We don't have to worry about excessive tannin extraction the way we do with something like Cabernet, and especially something like Petit Syrah, where if we ferment it too long and hold it on the skins, we can over extract and get too much tannin. That really doesn't happen with Zinfandel. There's not that much tannin to start with. So we can really go after everything that the fruit has to give us, ferment it for a long time on the skins. We drain it, we're light with the yolk, as I said, and the goal is always to really emphasize the differences between these wines.
Well, you guys have done a great job. It's a delicious wine. And one last thing I'm just going to add, and Ali can back this up. We just submitted the Qualia Zin to the Wine Institute. This is the organization that represents all 5,000 wineries in the state of California. They have selected the Qualia Zinfandel to be included in a study and a celebration of old vine zins for the entire state. It's going to be included on their website, and I mean that's a really cool thing, and maybe just one more thing that can keep those vines growing without more houses. Well, look, we got one more Zinfandel, then we got a quick intermission. Pete, what can you tell us about this Ramazzotti Zin?
Okay, Ramazzotti Zinfandel. This is a Sattui classic. It's one of the best-selling Zinfandels that I think Sattui's made over all these years. And Joe Ramazzotti has been farming Dry Creek Zinfandel since 1985. So you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody with more experience growing Zinfandel there than Joe. When we were looking to purchase our own Dry Creek Valley Zinfandel vineyard, of course, we leaned on Joe. And that speaks to our relationship with him over all these years. And Joe offered us guidance. He consulted for us for as long as it took to buy the property. And that's how we ended up with Schoolhouse Creek. So that's the Zinfandel vineyard that we bought for Sattui just a few years ago. Well, now we find ourselves with a couple different Dry Creek Valley Zinfandels, and that's just not something we need. There's a little bit too much. So I must say the 2025 is going to be the last Ramazzotti Vineyard vintage for Sattui. So if this is a wine that you've loved for many years, make sure you pick up some of the 2025. This will be the last one. This particular property, you can see on the graphic, is located further towards the east, and it's a little bit higher in elevation than where our Dry Creek Vineyard is, Schoolhouse. So Ramazzotti Vineyard being a little bit higher, it's above the fog, so it tends to get a bit more sunlight, and I think a bit riper flavors than you get down in the lower parts of the valley. So in tasting this wine, just make sure you savor this one. It's going to be the last time we're able to pour a new vintage of Ramazzotti for you. I'm tasting raspberry, plum, some savory herbs, but what really strikes me is the balance of this wine. Just really hits on all notes. Wines from Dry Creek tend to be a bit more structured. I think this one is very, very balanced and really just does a great job. So, Audrey, what do you think about the Ramazzotti this year?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that Dry Creek tends to get a lot of these more kind of herbal notes that are, I would call them brushy. So it's like you're actually out there smelling the brush. So I end up getting sage or like patchouli. Also, there's a really fresh acidity retained. I know you're saying this is a little bit above the fog line, but I think Dry Creek in general tends to have a natural acidity because there's good drainage there. And then there's also a diurnal shift that change in temperature is allowing the vines themselves to retain the acidity. And that's where I'm getting some more fresher notes like cranberry or more in that like raspberry spectrum as opposed to like just pure blackberry, like some of these other Zens. And I think it's great. I mean, you could just see by the change from where we're getting those like dark cocoa cherry over to this more spice-driven cranberry zin that there's a wide range of foods you can pair this with. So I would tend, just because I think spices like this go quite well with like smoked dishes or wood-fired dishes. I would go with grilled meats with this, would be really good. I have a hard time talking about food because it makes me really hungry. So, and it's getting close to dinner time, but yeah, I would take this to a barbecue any day.
Yeah, I agree. This is we have so many different Zinfandels, and we were fortunate enough to try four of these right here. A couple of them we're gonna miss, so don't miss out. Tom, what is the Zinfandel program meant to you at Visa Tui?
No, it's been everything. It's, the when I first stepped on the property, back in 40s, almost 47 harvests ago, the first bottle of wine Dario gave me was a 1976 Amador Zin. And, I just joined the company and as the fifth employee, and I went back to the campgrounds and I had this great Zin. So it's been imprinted with, as this is, part of our heritage. And, it was a grape de Vittorio, produced in San Francisco and so on and on. It's really part of who we are. And we just really need all of you to support us. As you can probably imagine, and many of you visit a lot of wineries here in the Napa Valley, there's not too many wineries left making old vine Zins, and they're going away, and we need your support. If you love these wines, you need to buy them. And so we can keep making them and growing them, because everyone's always looking for the brand new shiny penny or something, or the new blend. And, we make, so many wines, but, it's an exciting variety for us. It just goes with California cuisine. Just thinking about that Black Sears and Cara's Cacio Pepe, hint, hint. And so, anyway, thank you. What a great tasting of Zinfandel. I know we got some great Cabernets coming up. So I'd like to talk more about the Zins, but I think we got to get going and start talking about Cabernets. So before we do, we have a little intermission, and that doesn't mean go away. Just means that please make sure you bring the new flight of cabs in front and foremost, and that's what I'm doing right now. But I just would like to talk a few things before we jump into the cabs. This has been an exciting year with our 50th anniversary of our Mercado. And I know many of you have seen our Mercado del Gusto, but if Allie, I know, has got some images that she can share. But we're so excited about this place. We closed the original Mercado Market Deli for 13 months. And now we have this beautiful stone building, as you see, the little Dario wanted an Italian fountain, so I found an Italian fountain just outside of Milan. And so now he has throw some pennies in there for him. And then these amazing giant doors that open up into this food emporium. And, a lot of the inspiration of the Mercado came from visiting places like Karen and I used to go to Peck in Milan, or just still do, or Italy, if you've been to some of those places throughout the U.S. and Italy. And, James Ayers, our cheesemonger, last month we sold 267 different cheeses. We're doing really fun food and wine pairings. These are some savory s'mores. If you do a tasting upstairs, or even down in our Mercado or in the Cellar Club, we can do cheese and charcuterie platters. We have wine pairings. Of course, we have our food truck. The next week with the holiday, we're going to be doing pizzas and barbecue and gelato and affogatos. So I can't, if you love affogatos, and we've been getting such great press too. So from the Chronicle and Yahoo and we're continuing to get, I think the word's really getting out that this, we have put something really spectacular together, was even on TV, live on a couple of things. So, this is a salute. So salute to all of you for being such great fans of Visa Tui and supporting us to get to this 50th anniversary and to have this beautiful Mercado. We're having so much fun with it. We've put a great team together. Besides James, we have a new chef in our deli, and I think it was today Allie said her son had the best panini he's ever had here. So we continue, I think, to elevate, improve, but still remain who we are. Well, look, we have 3 great Cabernets we need to taste. and then we have a mystery wine. So we'll talk about that later. And then maybe many of you have been waiting to get to this point in the show. But Audrie, would you like to kick it off here with our first Cabernet?
Yeah, so we're gonna be tasting the Vittorio's Cabernet, which is the vineyard right here at the winery. I'm sure many of you guys have walked through this vineyard. And it's a really beautiful wine. I just want to give you tasting notes just so you can start getting into it. Um, this wine tends to have a very plush fruit profile and fruit aroma with a little hint of herbal spice. So I get a lot of blackberry, I get a little bit of dried Italian herb, which is very fitting for Sattui. Also, we've been farming this organically for, I believe, since 2012 is when we were certified organic. So this is our first estate that we farmed organic. And over time, the tannins have been developing differently. So I think a lot, especially the past few years, they've been rounding out quite a bit from when we first started farming this organically. So they can be still quite structured, a little bit, more harsh on the palate. But as they've had more time and these vines have gotten a little bit older, that has mellowed out a bit. And just overall, it lends to a very good wine that you can age, especially after it's spent some time in oak. So when I taste these, I expect it to be a little bit more harsh at this stage than maybe some of our other cabs, but it makes for really good aging wine. And I also really like the spice that you get from it. And I was just talking to Carter, one of our viticulturists here, and asking him, like, what are things that we're implementing that are a little bit new for 2025, or at least new in the past couple of years? And he was talking about how we're trying to manage our weed control differently. There's a lot more labor that goes into farming organically. So as opposed to going through and spraying to get rid of your weeds, you have to do a lot more manual methods. So we've been implementing methods that cut down weeds. So we have some new equipment that goes through and actually whacks down the weeds and incorporates it into the soil. So then you aerate the soil, and you end up having a more fertile soil as a result. So when I think organic farming, I think people having to spend a lot more time really assessing what the soil needs and what practices that we need to be more direct with when we're farming. So just talking to Carter, from year on year, we're constantly trying to improve that, and really get to know our land here a lot more. So it's really interesting to see how that changes into the change in tannin and the change in structure and the change in profile. And it really, you can see, makes a more approachable wine.
Right. Well, so Audrie, we have a faux pas here. So we correctly sent 4 Cabernets,
Oh,
but we did not send the Vittorios. The so
oh,
so,
interesting.
so this is hey, this is live, folks. So
Yeah.
we sent. So what we did, I think everyone's wines and their tasting mats are right. We're wrong. So the
Oh,
very
that's so
first wine
funny.
that we sent is the Preston. So that is the
Okay.
wine that we should be talking about right now.
Well,
And
I can talk on Preston for sure with the 2025
yeah,
because actually we've been splitting up our vineyards a little bit differently. So we've been doing different rounds on who's out in what vineyard during harvest, and Preston was one of the ones I got to go to, which is great. And that video with Mike that we saw when he was talking about Brooks, he was actually in Preston, I believe. So which is really beautiful vineyard. When I got to be out there, the vines are a bit taller, and I can tell you from first person, it's a bit of a harder vineyard to sample and pick because you're literally moving your arms from above your head. So I got a really good arm workout with that vineyard, but truly worth it. I would say it's the most blueberry tasting vineyard right from the vine. It tastes like you're having fresh blueberries and really concentrated blueberries, I thought. Yeah, I think that really carries through into the wine. This is actually a Rutherford vineyard, so you get that Rutherford dust, but as opposed to being on the Rutherford bench, like let's say Morasoli, this is off that bench. So there's a lot more uh, fan-like soil. So the vines are going to develop differently than you would. So even though we have multiple vineyards within Rutherford, and they still get that Rutherford dust character, they end up developing different fruit profile. So I find that that blueberry flavor comes through into the wine, and sometimes it develops more into a savory note as the wine ages. So yeah, really beautiful vineyard, not Vittorio's,
No, no,
but
this
equally as
so
good.
yeah, so very first, I mean, it was our very first vineyard designated Cabernet in 1976. Well, look, I think we did a quick video with Mike Nunez, our vineyard manager. So as soon as Ali can tee that up, he will talk a little bit about that particular, about the 25 vintage. But yeah, it's just been an amazing wine for us. It's just delicious, and I think here's the video.
At the Preston Vineyard, we have implemented dry farming protocols. Essentially, we waited for the roots to get established. Now that the roots are established, as long as we get at least 30 inches of rain, we're able to dry farm. Why dry farming? We get smaller berries, thicker skins, lower yields, higher phenolic concentration, finer, more persistent tannins. We are also able to pick up the Rutherford dust mineralities. We're able to maintain the heat waves, which dry farming vines are able to adapt to the current climates. And with the help of our trellis system of the Mosier having some cross arms, that helps protect the clusters from shrivel and any damage from the major heat. Our fruit thinning protocols are very strict, because at the end of the day, it's all about quality, not quantity.
Well, such a great video from Mike there. It's always a pleasure working with him. Definitely a master in his craft of being able to execute the best vineyards and the highest quality of fruit. So great to work with him.
Excuse me, Jason. I just had a question, but go ahead.
Oh, I had a question for you.
Okay.
You've been farming, or you've been working with this fruit and working with the Preston Vineyard for a long time here. Can you tell me a little bit about how do we get good consistency from year to year from this vineyard, and why is it always so good?
Well, first of all, the choice was made back in 1976 to work with Dick Preston, and Dario at the formation of V. Sattui Winery knew a good thing when he saw it. So I have to give Dario Sattui a lot of credit. And Dick Preston planted this vineyard. The soils, I think, come into play with consistency year to year, because unlike the Rutherford Bench, this is a little farther away from the mountain, and it also is closer to the river, so there's more fines in the soil. If you think of a meandering river over millennia going back and forth across the land and depositing fine particles, we have both cobble, rock, and the fine particles in clay. So it seems to give a little more of a consistency from year to year. The roots are more deeply rooted at depth, and so it's not fluctuating as much from year to year. It's always been, as Audrie described, some of the flavor profiles. It always has a characteristic flavor, and it's just a wonderful wine to work with. Peter has been on the crush pad receiving most of these grapes. And what would you add, Peter, about the condition of the fruit and the flavor profiles?
Sure. Well, the Preston Vineyard, I've always considered it to be the flagship Cabernet for Visa Tui. We use it for the single vineyard wines, but also for as a very key component in some of our reserve blends. So I find the fruit to be very clean, very pristine fruit. You look at the vineyard, as we saw with Mike out there. It's a great looking property. It's I would imagine pretty easy to farm compared to some of the other vineyards we work with. So they're really able to achieve exactly their objectives. So you get very even ripening of the fruit as it comes in. It's a very gravelly soil out there. I'm sure that plays a role in the natural acidity that the wine always has. And that is part of the secret to why Preston wines age so well. We have such a track record here with them. We've had wines 10 or 20 or 30 years old that they still hold up. So there's no other vineyard that we work with that has that longevity that Preston has. So certainly if you're looking for a wine that's going to age for a generation, Preston's the perfect one. And it all comes back to the vineyard and how much care they're taking out at that property and how perfect the fruit looks like when it comes in.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll just echo Peter's comment. It is always a component of all of our top wines. In addition to the single vineyard Preston, it goes into just about almost every wine that you might enjoy at some level.
Well, again, this is a wine that I think has just been a part of our heritage, is just like Qualia or Black Sears and since 1976. And I can't tell how many older Preston cabs we've opened up that have just been phenomenal. But they also drink really well when they're young. It's just one of those wines. And, something that Brooks has said for years, we just want to make a wine that's delicious, that invites you to take another glass. Often we're doing our tastings. Would I have another sip of this wine? Yeah, you bet. And I think that's where Preston fits. Well, look, just to keep the show moving, we continue just down about another, I don't know, not even 400 yards or so, and actually just up to the bottom of the Morazoli Vineyard, up on the alluvial fan of Rutherford Bench. We find our next wine. So I believe, Jason, you have the honors of this wine.
Definitely. And you're right, Tom. These vineyards are very close to each other, and yet you can taste from the first glass to now the second glass here, which is the Morazoli. Comparing these two, they're drastically different. I'm just going to jump right into tasting notes and then talk a little bit more about the vineyard. But just tasting this wine, give it a good smell. I mean, you can just smell the intensity of the fresh fruit and berries coming through. It has integrated oak. This is still an oak barrel, so it's still marrying together. But even though the wine is young, you can already taste the quality of this Cabernet Sauvignon. If you give it also another smell, look for those dusty characters. They're like an earthy aroma. And that's really coming from this appellation, which is that Rutherford dust. And then on the palate, oh yeah, delicious berries, more cassis. The mid palate is just full and rich. You can taste it all the way across your palate. And then it has a well-balanced finish to it that is very long, and you can just tell the quality from this wine through tasting it. Now, just want to talk a little bit about this vineyard. So it's in the Rutherford appellation, and we've been working with this crew with the Morazoli, Gary Morazoli, and now Chris Morazoli, for over 31 vintages. And this whole area is among just giants in the industry. I mean, just starting with, let's say, Joseph Phelps with Insignia. I mean, they're charging like $365 a bottle to I mean, there's even Scarecrow that's really close to there. One of those wineries that charges like $1,000 per bottle. So you know that this is an area that just holds quality. And so it's amazing to be able to get this fruit, work with the team there, and be able to craft something that is so beautiful. And I hope you guys are enjoying this glass, because I certainly am. But that's enough about the wine. I'd like to, listen to a little bit from Chris Morrisoli. We actually had an amazing interview with Audrie, going out and speaking with him a little bit about the family and the heritage there. So Ali, if you could cue up the video for Chris, we can learn a little bit more about the Morrisoli Vineyard.
In 1902 till about 1926, it was just a 10-acre spot. And then in 1926, my great-grandpa Plinio bought another 10 acres. And then in the 1950s, my grandpa Phil bought 17 acres that we're on right now, which is the Sattui block.
Yeah.
And then in the 1990s, my dad bought another 20 acres. So all in total, it's about 53 acres right now. Yeah, we're just really lucky to be in this spot.
Did you always know that you wanted to get into viticulture and you wanted to continue your family's legacy? Or were you starting to think, maybe I want to explore a little bit?
I definitely knew I wanted to come back and grow grapes and work with my mom and dad. I just wanted to do something else before that. So I commissioned into the Army in 2006 and joined the Army Medical Service Corps and flew medevac helicopters. So
amazing.
Yeah. And then deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was a great job. I loved doing it. It was a great way to be kind of out in front helping folks.
When I hear medevac, I'm just thinking really high intensity, and it's just such a stark difference to this, which is just a breath of fresh air. So how did you get into wanting to just take such a big leap?
I think the two complement each other really well. I think being able to farm and have that like relaxing way of life is really nice. And it's also fun to go out and fly helicopters, and I still fly with the California National Guard.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to fly on fires and floods and whatever the emergency of the day is in California. But to have that little bit of excitement thrown in there is nice as well.
Yeah.
So
you eventually decided it was time to come back. How did that go?
It went really well. So it was 2018. I'd been in the active Army for 12 years. And I know that my pops was like ready for an extra hand around the ranch. So I came back home and then just started working full time with him.
There's some big names in the area. So I'm sure you've gathered some stories. So how was it growing up in that environment?
We kind of call this the Hollywood block, right? Because you've got J.J. Cohen, who was the producer for MGM, who produced The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You've got Francis Ford Coppola right next door, who obviously made The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. So you've got all these like really cool people here who, again, I just didn't really understand when I was young. And then as you get older and you realize like, oh wow, there's a ton of history there.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So, is it true Apocalypse Now was filmed in this area?
They did some shots in the pond at the very end of Kneebomb Lane. So, yes.
Yeah.
And actually that boat was always up on the hill. So we would go run around, climb on it, and,
that's amazing.
and play Apocalypse Now when we were kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really great. What are some of the more traditional practices that you think are important to carry on as part of a legacy?
I think the classic old school farming techniques are important. And I think that's something that today with the larger corporations that we maybe don't see as much care for the land. And again, like really quality, good wine can't be produced at mass scale. It's got to be small and unique. And I think we have always understood that. And for example, when we till and hoe plow, we're using all mechanical implements, old school tractors that we maintain. And there's no spraying or herbicides, everything's just rolled back into the soil. That helps feed the vineyard.
So are you using tractors that maybe like your great-grandfather used?
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. I mean, these tractors are from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Our newest tractor is 2001. So we really take care of the old stuff
How would you say Rutherford dust is contributing to the flavor profile, and how does that connect to how you're farming?
It's attributed to Andrei Chelychev, who was the winemaker at Beaulieu Vineyard. And he said it takes Rutherford dust to grow great Cabernet. So,
Yeah.
where I think I get Rutherford dust is that kind of finesse and the power, but also the fine grain tannin. And I think that's where I can pick out what Rutherford dust means to me. And it's just smooth, and you can kind of smell it too. It has this nice like petrichor-y kind of fresh rain, and it's just really kind of unique to Rutherford.
Yeah, I find that really interesting about Napa Valley is tannin profile changes entirely depending
Definitely.
on where you're at.
But what that does is it gives it such a long lifespan.
Yeah.
Because where it might be a little angular at first, you give it a few years, you get the right wood and barrel, and then those wines are able to last for 20, 30, 40 years and be beautiful.
So what do you think of the 2025 vintage? Everyone always talks about this new one's the best one.
Of course.
Do you think this actually is?
Man, I think we've had a really good run of great years lately. So 23, 24, and 25 are all just beautiful. 25 had the luxury of being kind of a long, extended year with no major heat spikes. Everything just went really well, and that provides for nice development of those flavor profiles and complexities and balance, really. So it's able to be a really well-balanced wine. We had a lot of good rain in 25, so you get that flavors, and yeah, it's going to be amazing. And that will be a long-lasting vintage as well.
It was a great interview, Audrie, and thank you for that. What does everybody think of this wine? It's I just hear some of the comments. Awesome. I think that's a great descriptor. What do you guys think?
I think this is showing so well at this stage as a young red wine. It's just going to be fabulous when we release it. It's everyone should be adding this multiple cases to their cellar.
Yeah. Well, and this is another one that is very limited. It always sells out on futures. So definitely this is one you want to add to your portfolio. Well, look, are we ready to go on to, we got two more wines. We have our next wine is our own estate, Napa Valley Cab. This is our 2025 Mountain Veeder. Brooks, this vineyard's just around the corner from your home. I know you spend a lot of time down there. We've walked this vineyard more times than I can remember together. It's I think a special vineyard for both of us.
Well, it is, and in fact, my the vineyard behind me is what we call the upper blocks at Mount Veeder, and this is where the majority of these grapes come from to go into this particular wine. So from day one, I fell in love with this. My early career was in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and mountain coastal influenced Cabernet just struck a chord with me, and my memory of those wines are really strong as of today. And when I saw Hibbard Cabernet up in Mount Veeder, I'm going, I've come home. This is right where I started my career, and I just love farming and working with these wines. The cool climate throws in an element of very soft tannins, extremely dark color, just round, voluptuous flavors, and so it's always been near and dear to my heart, this particular wine. And I think that all the other wines that we make, of course, the appellations are very distinct, and that's one thing that the 2025 vintage seemed to emphasize. The appellations were separated a little bit more than normal, so you could really see, we have mountain grown from various areas and all the way down to Carneros, and you could see there was a differential in the characteristics and the quality. So these vines are getting on in age, so we've actually pulled about, of these vineyards right behind me in the video, we've pulled almost half of them out and are in the process of replanting. After 25, 28 years, the the vines need to be replanted. They're suffering from a variety of pests and diseases and things. So at any rate, and in the meantime, we have a choice of working with different root stocks and clones. The original clone selection was because it's hillside. The rootstocks were fairly well dry farmed selections, but at any rate, that's all between the viticulturalists and us as winemakers trying to decide, okay, what is going to be the right rootstock, which clone should we use, and it's always a little bit of a mystery and a conundrum, and then you find out 7 to 12 years later if you made the right decision. In this case, Mount Veeder, we made the right decision. This wine is fabulous.
I agree. I mean, just smelling this wine, and even before you smell it, let's take a look at this wine. It looks so dark. We say inky dark. I almost feel like I could pull this out of the glass and put it in my pen and write with it. It's so dark. And then on the nose, the intensity of the fruit, it gives you a sense of place. I mean, looking right behind Brooks, that it's such an amazing vineyard to be on. And I too have a soft spot for mountain cab. So before Sattui, I worked for Mount Veeder Winery. And so it's an absolutely amazing appellation. And the cab coming off of there is some of the best for sure. And I particularly like it because it does have a little bit of that herbal tone to it. In this glass, I see it more as like a slight tobacco. And that's really what's coming through to me. And then, yeah, for the clones that we're replanting in this, Brooks, thank you for bringing that up. We're choosing clones that are going to continue the high quality, but this is also giving us the opportunity to change the rootstock, which is the lower half of the vine that's down in the ground. And so we're actually turning this over to a little bit more of a vigorous rootstock, and we're doing that because we want to be able to apply a little bit less water and be a little more conservative with water. So it being a little bit more aggressive, it's going to want to grow a little bit more. So the way that we're going to control it is we're actually going to be planting a cover crop right next to the vine. And so that vine is going to compete with that water when we want it there, and then we can disc it in and remove it if needed. If that's the way that we're going to be able to balance these vines, and that's what we're looking forward to in the future for this. But definitely, we just tore out half of these upper blocks from this amazing vineyard. So this year, 2025, we have half the amount. It's even more rare for this vintage and for the next few vintages until the next vines come online. And so I definitely get it when you can, because we may run out of this.
I'd like to point out one point of distinction between our Mount Veeder Cabernet and the other wines that we've discussed, and that's that Preston and Morosoli, Vittoria's as well. They're all valley floor vineyards, right down the kind of the center of Napa Valley. And Mount Veeder is high elevation, and when you're dealing with mountain fruit, they behave very differently. The soils are much thinner. The vines tend to stay much smaller. So with smaller vines, you get low yield, you get small clusters, and you get small berries. And when you get small berries, you get intense flavors, intense color, as you mentioned, Jason. Also, you get a little bit of, for our Mount Veeder, you tend to get some little bit of green flavors, maybe mint or eucalyptus. And for me, this is a winemaker's wine. Whenever I have the opportunity to trade a bottle with a colleague from another winery, I always choose Mount Veeder because it's personal to us, because it's it's our estate vineyard. It's really a gem of a property. But also, winemakers love this wine because it's always in balance. It has great texture, great color. It never has a super high alcohol, and it has these nuanced flavors in the background that are hard to find on valley floor fruit.
Hey, we just got a question here from the text. It looks like I'm going to throw this one to Brooks. Hey, Brooks, can you talk to us a little bit about cover crop and what we use for our cover crops?
Yes, well, it's a mix of various spring and summer dormant plants. So the idea is during the rainy season up through the beginning of June, they're growing very vigorously and around the roots and around the vines. But then once the heat kicks in early summer, they go dormant, and so they no longer compete during the rest of the year. And so that's kind of our target. We want to have early season competition with the vine roots, and then late season they go to sleep and they're no longer competing. And then you can choose a variety of mixes. Some are legumes that actually add nitrogen to the soil if you're thinking that your soils are deficient in nitrogen. And there's a whole science related to that, of course. In this case, Mount Veeder is farmed organically, and so it's all hand or mechanical till to deal with the weeds. And typically, what we do is we will sow the cover crop every other row, and then the next year we'll choose the second row, and so we kind of rotate back and forth between those two. Between the adjacent vines, so that we're not always directing the competition at any specific vine. And it seems to work quite well. And also, in addition to cover crops competing with the vines for nutrients, it also holds the soil on the hillside. And this is mandated by our erosion control plans. So we have to be very rigorous about erosion control measures, and that's a big part of what we're doing.
Well, it's a delicious wine. It's been one of my favorites as well. I love the mountain fruit. It's if you ever get a chance to go there, if you get to their top blocks, you can see all the way to San Francisco. It's just one of these amazing sights. So we're down to, and then again, as Jason said, our allocation's been cut in half of this wine because now we're redeveloping half the vineyard. So if this is one of your favorite wines, I mean, please jump on it. So here we are to our mystery wine. So for those that were at our winemaker's dinner, we love having mystery wines. We love to taste wines blindly. And please know this is something that as winemakers, we do all the time. When we're doing our tastings, we just did it the other day. We're always trying to second guess, okay, what did Audrie put in my glass? But so we're always trying to figure out what the heck are we tasting. And let me tell you, it's not an exact science. So we're looking to all of you to tell us what we're tasting. And I'm just going to make this fun for anyone that guesses this wine correctly. And that means that you have to submit on chat the correct wine and the correct vintage. If you get the first one who gets it right, will get a really nice little luncheon here at the winery. So, and that means you have to come here. So anyway, keep your guesses coming. So let's just bring this out to the team. What are you all tasting in this wine? What do we got here?
Well, I think it's a complete wine in the sense that it has a lot of complexity, a lot of different angles, elements, flavor, aromatics. And so it's hard to distinguish a certain specific characteristic. It's kind of the sum of the whole for me. It's just delicious.
Yeah, I'll say that I think this wine is all about texture. It's big volume tannins, but they're so complete and seamless from start to finish that all the gaps are filled in. It's velvety, it's plush, while being huge in volume and rich.
Well, look, it didn't take long for us to come up with a winner. And so here, let me just back up. It is the 2025. Who got this first? It sure looks like Burgess guessed the 25 Paradiso. So congratulations.
Good job.
Good job. Woo!
That was quick.
That was quick. You got a great palate. So let's keep going. This is, boy, what a wine.
Well, what makes this wine really entertaining from the winemaking point of view and from our staff is that every year we're giving these raw materials. We're given the seasonal variations, the growing conditions, the maturity at harvest, the extraction in the tank, and then we get to play with it. And so Paradiso is a Bordeaux blend, started in 2007, first vintage. It's our featured wine every year at our winemaker dinner, where we're releasing it for the first time. And each of these 5 Bordeaux varieties play a significant role. And I thought we'd give everyone a chance to explain what they like about each variety and maybe what they're seeing in this glass. So Jason, how about Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc? What does that bring to the glass?
All right. Yeah, so Bordeaux varietals, I think the two powerhouses that bring the structure to this wine are Cabernet Sauvignon and Cab Franc. Now, Cab Franc is one of the parents to Cabernet Sauvignon, of course. And so they do have some similarities where they both have very beautiful dark berry tones of cassis and blackberry. But I'd say the Cab Franc, which is a personal favorite of mine, many of you know, also brings like this spicy tone to it. It brings this complexity to the blend, which I can definitely get a hint of that in this glass in particular. And so those are what these two varieties really bring to the table. Now, Audrie, maybe you can let us know, what would Merlot and Malbec bring to this blend?
Yeah, well, you're saying Cab brings a lot of structure and so does Cab Franc, and I totally agree with that. But sometimes they can have a hollowness to them, just because they're so broad as wines that they need something to fill that out. And that's where Merlot tends to come in. If we taste a wine and we say it tastes hollow, then I would say, well, we obviously need to bring in some Merlot. That brings some of that mid-palate plushness. That it really kind of rounds out a wine. And you can have Cab on its own and you can have Merlot on its own, but together they really complement each other. Malbec, I would say, if there's a wine that I think needs to have a little bit more dark depth to it, or some dark berry. Also, it brings a lot of structure depending on the type of Merlot. I mean, sorry, the type of Malbec. You can have either a really bright Malbec or you can have a really dark fruit Malbec. So we, even depending on our winemaking style, can make it one way or the other, or depending on the vineyard. But generally speaking, I would say it brings that color, it brings the intensity, and brings a little bit more complexity to the fruit, and a little bit different fruit than, say, a Cabernet or a Merlot.
Sure, and I'll wrap it up with the Petit Verdot. Petit Verdot really is it's a finishing touch. So it's after the fruit is decided, the structure is decided, as Audrie mentioned, fixing the mid palate, all of those things are set. And you just want that little accent that's really going to push a blend from good to exceptional. And Petit Verdot does that. And it really just takes 1, 2, or 3%. I believe the 2025 that we're tasting right now is at 3%. So it's on the higher side, but still is just a dash. And it can darken the color. It gives density, even further density to the mid palate if that's needed. And really importantly, it adds to the aromatics in a way that we don't get in any of the other Bordeaux varietals. And that's a little hint for you guys at home. If you smell violet or lavender or perfume, things like that in a red blend, there's a good chance that it came from Petit Verdot. So that's why Paradiso always has this complexity of aromatics that you're not going to find in any of our single varietal wines. And 3% Petit Verdot came together beautifully Paradiso is always my favorite wine from Visa Tui. I haven't gone a holiday dinner without Paradiso on my table since we started making it. Hey, Tom, you got a guest. Let's take you off mute.
Thank you for the reminder. Well, I do have a very special guest here. And let me just say, we did it. We got through all 8 wines. Only took us an hour and a half. So great job, everyone. And oh boy, just my hats off to the winemaking team. This is an amazing array of wines from a crazy vintage. And so for all of you, look at all the hearts and stuff coming up here for you, Janet. Janet is probably single-handedly sells about half the futures that we have here at the winery. And so I thought I would just leave it up to Janet here to kind of just summarize why you would want to buy some of these wines.
Well, if you're a longstanding member, you probably know what you like already, and you're going to buy it anyhow. So you might as well buy it in advance and get a really good deal on it. If you're a newer person who's just coming on board, you can become a member very easily by buying probably one future, because you get full credit for the entire purchase amount, and you only have to pay half when you buy it and the other half later on. So you can get more bang for your delayed buck.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. I like futures because you get involved in the evolution of the wine from the beginning to you can watch it come babysit your baby and taste it as it grows throughout the year, and you can see it in its finished product. So you see the start to finish of things and kind of understand how the wine evolves as it stays in the barrel, and what to anticipate when it's going to be the finished product. So I think it's just smart and it's fun. I guess that's what I'd say.
Well, and Janet, you have these wines in the cellar, and so when people come, they can taste their babies, as they evolve in the barrel, and because we have them for over a year in the barrel that people can taste. Well, please take advantage. I just looked. Our allocation of the remaining Paradiso is 19 cases. And we have a lot more people on this Zoom. If I will guarantee you, if you order, in the next few days, and you want the Paradiso, we'll give it to you. But I know it'll be sold out in a matter of days, because this is really our last offering, with so few cases left remaining. And many of these other wines are in short supply. And we also, of course, take advantage of the great discounts we have right now. All cases are 20% off. And then, the more you get, the bigger the discount you're going to get as well. So, and your wine consultant can help you with this if you're used to ordering that way, or, you could just call us here at the winery. We'd love to talk to you, or send us a text or an email, whatever you like. So any last thoughts to the team? This has been, what a great way to kind of round out a Friday. I'm feeling pretty good right now.
I'd like to say congratulations. We pulled it off, and we also almost stayed on our time. And so thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is so much fun, and I'm sure you enjoy it as well. And come and see us at Visa Tui as soon as possible. And those are my comments. I'd love to see you as soon as have a chance to come here.
Well, and we do have a reason for people to come, because this year is just beginning. So we have an amazing harvest ball coming up this year, and we're hoping all of you can come join us. It's a crazy dinner we're going to have. We're having so for those that can remember, like a decade ago, Super Diamond's coming back. So if you want to really get out in that dance floor and really have some tear it up, I think you're going to have a fun time with that. And Stefano Massanti, our Michelin star chef, 16 years now, Michelin star. We're going to be going up to Greystone, and that is at the beautiful CIA, Culinary Institute of America, in St. Helena, that beautiful stone building. We're taking over the Eco Lab, which is about 100 some person cooking demonstration area, and he's going to be cooking up some great stuff, and that'll be on Friday. So please sign up for that. I know the Bowmans have already signed up 10, so we've already sold 10% already. So if anyone wants to come to that, sign up soon, because it's gonna sell out quickly. And there's so much to share with you. For those that are at the winemakers dinner, we had an amazing time. It was a great fun evening. That's another thing you should put on your calendar if you can make it out to that. We released 3 new amazing Cabernets, one all 2023s, Raffaella's Cab, which is adjacent to the Vittorio's vineyard right here on the estate. Our Black's Sears Cabernet, first time ever for this wine. And boy, if you love the Black Sears Zin, this big mountain cab is crazy. In these wines, we've made about 120 cases of. And then if you want to know, well, why our dust up is so darn good, is the Becker. And the Becker is what goes into the Rutherford dust up. We carved out 100 cases, so we took a few barrels of Becker and made it as a singular wine. So 3 new wines to enjoy. If maybe some of you purchased that on futures already. And again, I just want to thank everyone. This would not have happened without Allie Patterson on the board here tonight. She's put so much work into this event, and I see my lovely wife Kara is participating. Hi, Kara, at home, and also to the winemaking team and to Russell, who with his amazing video productions, and Alan and the support staff. I think we bottled up something like 1,600 little bottles, and this was done by hand. So please know a lot of effort went into this by everyone. And I just would like to raise a toast to all of you, to toast here our 50th anniversary, opening of our Mercado, and to Janet, to you, and to others. Thank you for being a part of this virtual wine tasting. And it would not be possible for us to be celebrating this without all of you enjoying our wines. So can't wait to see you all back here. If not for a Festa Italiana, hopefully for the Harvest Ball as well. And Brooks, congratulations. Thanks to you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers, you guys.
Thanks a lot for coming in and joining us at this really phenomenal way to share our wines and what we're doing.
Oh, here, Janet, I have a glass of wine here for you too.
They wanted some rice sweets.
Cheers, Janet.
Cheers. Salute.
Cheers.
Okay.